Hello, Virgo. Mm, you've been sensing it building for a while now, haven't you? That tremor beneath the surface of your everyday existence. That feeling of tectonic plates shifting in the foundation of your reality. And what's been brewing in the invisible realms is finally beginning to materialize in ways you can touch, see, verify with your physical senses. Let me share what I'm detecting in the transformational currents surrounding you right now. The first thing breaking through is this recognition you might be experiencing that your familiar world is dissolving. You could be picking up on multiple areas of life simultaneously destabilizing, not in catastrophic way, but in necessary dismantling that precedes reconstruction. You might be sensing that structures you've relied on, relationships, jobs, living situations, identities, belief systems, are revealing themselves as temporary scaffolding rather than permanent architecture. And watching those supports come down while new ones haven't fully formed yet is creating vertigo that's both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. Here's what you could be observing in your tangible circumstances. You might be noticing opportunities appearing that weren't on your radar even weeks ago. Doors opening in directions you hadn't considered. People entering your sphere who bring possibilities you didn't know existed. You could be picking up on acceleration in how quickly things are moving. Where previous stagnation made you feel stuck for months or years, and now suddenly everything's shifting faster than you can process, faster than feels entirely comfortable, faster than allows you to control or predict outcomes with your usual careful planning. What's erupting through the existential bedrock is that you could be dealing with change that's requiring you to become different person. You might be sensing that adjustments being asked of you aren't superficial modifications to existing self, but fundamental transformation of who you are, how you think, what you value, how you show up, what you're willing to tolerate or pursue. You could be picking up on your own evolution happening in real time. Personality traits that defined you for years suddenly feeling like costumes you're ready to remove. Limitations you accepted as permanent, revealing themselves as chosen. Possibilities you dismissed as unrealistic for someone like you, suddenly seeming not just achievable, but inevitable. This reflection invites you to consider what part of your identity you've been clutching that this transformation is asking you to release, and whether your resistance to change is protecting something valuable or just familiar discomfort you've mistaken for safety because you've worn it so long. You might be noticing that you're experiencing grief alongside excitement. You could be picking up on sense of mourning for life you're leaving behind, even if that life wasn't serving you. Even if you're consciously choosing to move beyond it, you might be sensing loss of predictability, of knowing who you are and where you stand. And that disorientation of shedding old skin before new one has fully formed is uncomfortable in ways that make you question whether transformation is worth the temporary chaos it creates. What's radiating through the dimensional gateways is that you could be dealing with synchronicities that are impossible to dismiss as coincidence. You might be picking up on universe confirming your path through repeated signs, numbers appearing with suspicious frequency, conversations echoing themes you were just contemplating, strangers offering exactly the information or encouragement you needed at precise moment you needed it. You could be experiencing what people call magic or divine intervention or simply reality responding to your shifted vibration. And these confirmations are helping you trust that upheaval you're experiencing isn't random chaos, but orchestrated transition towards something your soul has been calling in, even if your conscious mind didn't understand the request. What's particularly intense about what I'm witnessing is that you might be approaching a moment where you have to make choice that can't be unmade. You could be sensing decision point approaching, where you either commit to new path fully or retreat to familiar territory, where you either step into emerging version of yourself or contract back into who you've been. You might be picking up on irreversibility of what's being offered, understanding that some doors only open once, that certain windows of possibility have expiration dates, that timing matters in ways that make hesitation costly. Um, you might be observing that people in your current life are responding to your transformation with mixed reactions. You could be experiencing celebration from some quarters and resistance from others is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than noticing who's excited about your growth versus who feels threatened by it, who's encouraging your expansion versus who's subtly or overtly trying to keep you contained. You might be picking up on social sorting happening where your evolution is functioning as filter that reveals who's actually aligned with your highest good versus who's invested in a version of you that serves their needs rather than your development. What's threading through the temporal fabric is that you could be dealing with acceleration that's been building for longer than you realize. You might be sensing that what appears as sudden dramatic change is actually culmination of incremental shifts. That choices you made months or years ago are finally producing visible results. That invisible preparation has reached critical mass where transformation becomes undeniable. You could be picking up on harvest time, where seeds planted in faith are simultaneously producing fruit. An abundance of what's emerging is overwhelming precisely because you'd stop tracking all the different areas where you were doing internal work that's now manifesting externally. This reflection invites you to consider what you've been investing in quietly, consistently, without fanfare, and whether you're giving yourself credit for the groundwork that's making this breakthrough possible rather than treating it as lucky break that happened to you randomly. You might be noticing that you're experiencing imposter syndrome as your life improves. You could be picking up on internal voice questioning whether you deserve what's happening is less than hash zero. 5 hash is greater than whether you're qualified for opportunities presenting themselves, whether you'll be exposed as fraud when people realize you don't actually belong in elevated circumstances you're entering. You might be sensing that old programming about your worth is activating precisely because transformation is real. Because your subconscious recognizes that accepting new reality requires releasing stories about limitation that have kept you safe by keeping you small. What's also surfacing is that you could be dealing with practical logistics of change overwhelming your capacity to manage them. You might be experiencing too many good things happening simultaneously. Multiple opportunities requiring decisions, various new connections demanding attention, different areas of life all needing restructuring at once. You could be picking up on temporary chaos that comes when life rearranges itself faster than your organizational systems can accommodate, and learning to tolerate mess, to prioritize imperfectly, to accept that you can't control every detail during major transition is part of what this period is teaching you about surrender and trust. The vibrational blueprints suggest you might be experiencing this transformation as affecting every domain simultaneously. You could be sensing shifts in romantic relationship or lack thereof, in career or financial situation, in health or living environment, in creative expression or spiritual understanding. You might be picking up on holistic reconfiguration, where because you're changing at core level, every external circumstance that was organized around old version of you has to reorganize to accommodate new version. And that comprehensive restructuring is why change feels so dramatic rather than isolated to single area. What's significant is that you could be approaching visibility you've been simultaneously desiring and fearing. You might be sensing that transformation happening is going to make you more seen, that success you're experiencing or opportunities you're receiving are going to expose you to scrutiny, that stepping into bigger version of life means stepping out of comfortable anonymity. You could be picking up on vulnerability of being witnessed and making peace with being perceived, with having opinions directed at you, with losing privacy that comes with smaller life is part of price of expansion. You're being asked whether you're willing to pay. This reflection invites you to consider what you've been sacrificing to stay small, and whether that sacrifice of potential, of impact, of fulfillment is actually less scary than visibility you've been avoiding, or whether you've simply become habituated to one form of discomfort while magnifying fears about a different form you haven't actually experienced yet. Um, you might be picking up on this transformation requiring you to disappoint some people. You could be experiencing awareness that choices serving your evolution might conflict with others' expectations, that you can't expand into new life while maintaining all previous commitments, that growth necessarily means some relationships shift or end. You might be sensing guilt about that reality. And distinguishing between appropriate sadness about natural consequences of growth versus inappropriate obligation to stay stuck so others remain comfortable is crucial. Discernment you're navigating right now. What I'm witnessing in the probability streams is that you could be dealing with financial transformation as part of larger shift. You might be picking up on money flowing differently, opportunities for income increasing, relationship with resources changing from scarcity to sufficiency or beyond. You could be experiencing practical material improvement that removes constraints you've been operating under and adjusting to having more options, more breathing room, more capacity to invest in yourself and your desires rather than just surviving is psychological shift that's as significant as practical one. The resonant frequencies suggest you might be experiencing this as spiritual awakening as much as life change. You could be sensing that external transformation is reflecting internal shift in consciousness, that you're seeing reality differently, that you're accessing wisdom or intuition that wasn't available before, that you're connecting to purpose or meaning that gives coherence to experiences that previously felt random. You might be picking up on yourself, waking up, and once you've seen what you're now seeing about yourself and life and possibility, you can't unsee it, which is both liberation and responsibility because consciousness doesn't allow retreat into comfortable unconsciousness. What's also coming through is that you could be dealing with health improvements accompanying other changes. You might be noticing increased energy, better sleep, physical symptoms that plagued you resolving. And recognizing connection between well being and alignment is helping you understand that much of what you experienced as health problems were actually manifestations of being in wrong circumstances, relationships, or mindsets. You could be picking up on your body, celebrating your choices, on vitality, returning as you move toward life that actually fits who you are rather than who you thought you had to be. This reflection invites you to consider what you notice about your physical state when you think about your emerging future versus your historical past, and whether your body's responses are giving you information about direction that's more accurate than your mind's fearful projections. You might be observing that you're experiencing this transformation as both chosen and destined. You could be picking up on your own agency in creating change through decisions and actions, while also sensing that larger forces are conspiring to move you in directions that serve purposes beyond your individual preferences. You might be sensing collaboration between your will and something transcendent, and holding that paradox that you're both author and character in story unfolding is spiritually maturing work that prevents you from either taking too much credit or abdicating too much responsibility. What's pulsing through the manifestation fields is that you could be dealing with dreams or visions becoming reality. You might be experiencing things you visualized or wrote about or discussed hypothetically suddenly materializing. Recognizing your own creative power in shaping reality, seeing evidence that consciousness participates in construction of experience rather than just passively observing it. You could be picking up on magic of intentionality, and that confirmation of your ability to influence your life through focused attention and aligned action is both empowering and sobering because it means you can't blame circumstances anymore for situations you're unconsciously perpetuating through unexamined beliefs or behaviors. The harmonic convergences suggest you might be experiencing this as right timing, despite how it might have felt like wrong timing before. You could be sensing that delays you experienced weren't denials but necessary preparation periods, that you needed to develop capacities or clear obstacles or meet certain people before you were ready for what's now arriving. You might be picking up on perfection of orchestration, on way everything you've been through has prepared you for exactly this moment, and trusting that timing serves you even when you don't understand the design helps you release resentment about past struggles and receive current blessings with gratitude rather than suspicion. What's also threading through is that you could be dealing with identity crisis as positive development. You might be experiencing confusion about who you are now, that you're not who you were, finding that old labels don't fit, that previous self concepts feel constraining, that you're in between selves without clear definition of emerging identity. You could be picking up on disorientation of transformation and understanding that not knowing who you are temporarily is actually sign you're growing rather than sign something's wrong is a crucial reframe that allows you to stay in productive discomfort rather than prematurely contracting back into outdated self concept just to ease anxiety. This reflection invites you to consider what becomes possible when you release need to have yourself figured out, and whether staying curious about who you're becoming serves you better than rushing to new fixed identity that might become next cage you'll eventually need to break out of. So, as you navigate this period of drastic change, practice staying present with what's actually happening rather than catastrophizing about what could go wrong. You might be experiencing anxiety that manufactures problems before they exist, that assumes change must lead to disaster, because stability has been your only evidence of safety. But transformation isn't punishment. Growth isn't dangerous, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it requires you to release what's familiar, even when outcome isn't guaranteed before you commit. Trust that you're being supported through this transition, even when support looks different than you expected. You might be wanting certainty, clear instructions, guarantee of success before you leap. But life doesn't work that way. Faith is required exactly because proof isn't available. Trust is necessary precisely because control isn't possible. And developing capacity to move forward despite uncertainty is muscle you're building that will serve you for a rest of your life. Your life is changing drastically because you're ready for it to change drastically. You might not feel ready. You might be terrified. You might be convinced you're going to fail or that you'll lose yourself in transformation. But readiness isn't absence of fear. It's willingness to proceed despite fear. It's understanding that staying where you are has become more costly than risk of moving forward. Even though moving forward means entering unknown territory without map, this is it. This is the breakthrough you've been working toward, even when you didn't know you were working toward it. This is life responding to who you've become, to choices you've made, to prayers you've whispered in dark, and what's arriving now is both answer and beginning. Answer to what you've been asking for, beginning of everything that comes next, and standing in that threshold with courage, with openness, with willingness to let your life be bigger and stranger and more beautiful than you ever let yourself imagine. That's your only job right now. Let it change. Let yourself change. Let the transformation be as dramatic as it needs to be, because you're not meant for small life anymore. You're meant for this. Trust it, receive it, become it, and watch everything shift into alignment with who you actually are rather than who you've been pretending to be to keep everyone else comfortable. Your real life is starting now. Let it start.